I work the night shift at a small local TV station in rural Montana. It's one of those jobs where you mostly just make sure nothing goes wrong with the automated broadcast system while everyone else is sleeping. 12 hours of mind-numbing boredom punctuated by occasional technical hiccups. At least that's what it was supposed to be. 3 weeks ago, I started noticing something strange happening during our 3 a.m. broadcast slot. We run old public domain movies during that time. Nobody's watching anyway, and it's cheap content to fill airtime. I was half asleep in the control room when I noticed something off about the black and white western playing on the monitor. There was a figure standing in the background of a scene where I could swear there hadn't been anyone before. It was just a silhouette, barely visible behind the main actors. I rewound the digital file, thinking maybe I just hadn't noticed it the first time through. But when I played it again, the figure was gone. I chalked it up to fatigue and too much coffee. Night shifts mess with your head, and I've seen weirder things while sleep-deprived. But then it happened again the next night. This time it was during an old noir film. A woman was delivering a monologue in her apartment, and in the window behind her, I saw a face peering in, just for a second before the camera angle changed. I jumped up and rewound the footage. Nothing there on the second viewing. I started recording our broadcasts on my phone, thinking maybe there was some kind of transmission issue that was causing these glitches. The recordings showed nothing unusual, but I kept seeing these anomalies on the live monitor, fleeting shapes in the background, strange distortions in people's faces, background extras staring directly at the camera when they shouldn't be. Last week, things escalated. The 3 a.m. slot was playing Night of the Living Dead, and halfway through, one of the zombie extras turned to face the camera and spoke. This wasn't part of the movie. I know because I've seen it dozens of times. The zombie's mouth moved, and though there was no audible sound, I could read the lips clearly. "We see you watching." I nearly fell out of my chair. I grabbed my phone and started recording, my hands shaking. When I played back the clip I'd recorded, the zombie was just shuffling around mindlessly like it was supposed to. But I know what I saw on the monitor. I tried telling my supervisor, but he just laughed it off. "Classic night shift paranoia," he said. "Take some vitamin D supplements. The lack of sunlight is getting to you." Maybe he was right. Maybe I was just sleep-deprived and imagining things. I considered requesting a schedule change, but the weird part is, I didn't want to. Something kept drawing me back to those late-night broadcasts. I needed to know what was happening. 4 nights ago, I made a discovery. I noticed that these anomalies only appeared on broadcast signals, never on the digital files themselves. Something was intercepting or altering our broadcast between the station and the transmission. I set up a second monitor connected directly to our antenna feed to compare with our studio output. That night, the differences between the two feeds were undeniable. While the Maltese Falcon played normally on the studio monitor, the broadcast version showed subtle but unsettling differences. Background characters moved differently. Scene transitions lingered a beat too long. And Humphrey Bogart's eyes, they were solid black, like empty sockets. I started documenting everything, taking photos of both screens side by side. The photos showed the differences clear as day, so it wasn't just in my head. Something or someone was hijacking our broadcast signal. Last night, I decided to stay after my shift ended at 6 a.m. to talk to the morning crew about what I'd found. That's when I made the most disturbing discovery yet. When the morning shift manager arrived, she looked at me strangely. "What are you doing here, Alex? You're not scheduled until tonight." I told her I had just finished my shift, but she shook her head and showed me the schedule on her tablet. According to the official record, I hadn't worked last night, or the night before, or any night in the past 2 weeks. But I had been here. I had the photos on my phone to prove it. Except when I checked my phone, the photos were gone. The recordings were gone. Everything was gone. The only evidence I had was a single text message I had sent to myself at 3:17 a.m. last night that simply read, "It's replacing us one by one." I don't remember sending that message. I went home in a daze, convinced I was losing my mind. When I arrived at my apartment, my key didn't work. After several attempts, my neighbor came out and asked if I needed help. "Hey, are you looking for Alex?" she asked, not recognizing me. "He moved out about 2 weeks ago. Are you a friend of his?" I stood there, unable to speak. How could she not recognize me? I've lived next door to her for 3 years. I managed to mumble something about having the wrong apartment and walked away. I'm writing this now from a motel room, using a laptop I bought today. I don't know who or what has taken over the broadcast, but I think it's spreading beyond the signal now. Tonight at 3 a.m., every TV in this town will be airing our public domain movie slot. I don't know how many people might be watching. Insomniacs, night shift workers, people who fall asleep with their TVs on. But I know something will be watching back through those screens. I'm going back to the station tonight. I need to find a way to stop the broadcast. If you're reading this and you live in a small town with a local TV station, do me a favor. Don't watch anything that airs at 3 a.m. And if you see someone who looks exactly like you walking around, run. There's something wrong with my street, my town, and it starts after midnight. You'll hear laughter, children playing, sometimes tag, sometimes jump rope, sometimes just calling. But we all know better. You don't open the window. You don't peek through the blinds. You never go outside. I told Emily this, but she didn't believe me. She thought it was just some dumb story I made up to scare her. She doesn't think that anymore, because she's gone. Emily came to live with us in January. Her mom, my aunt, was diagnosed with leukemia, and my parents said it'd just be for a while. But I knew better. The grown-ups had that quiet, serious tone they only use when things are really bad. Her mother's condition weighed on her greatly. They were all each other had. Emily and I were both in 5th grade, but we weren't exactly close. I mean, she was my cousin, but we weren't friends. She cried a lot, didn't talk much at school. We didn't like the same things. My mom said she just needed time to adjust, and she needed me. The Community Creek School was just a block away, at the dead end of our street. A small charter school, praised for its community atmosphere, small class sizes, and great test scores. Emily got assigned to Miss Blackburn's class, the Miss Blackburn. Everyone knew about her. She'd been teaching 5th grade since the 90s, and somehow still looked like she was in her 30s. All the boys called her a MILF, but I was pretty sure she didn't have kids. The juicy rumor was she was a witch who fed on kids to stay young. Dumb story, right? Our town had lots of these stupid tales. The older kids always used to try and scare us with the same one about the night kids. If you hear kids playing outside your house after 2 a.m., don't go. Don't answer. Don't say your name, or you'll join them. We were out in the yard late one night riding bikes. Mom called for us to come inside jokingly, warning us that the night kids would get us. Afterwards, I explained the tale from our neighborhood to her. "If you hear the kids, don't go outside," she laughed. "What kids?" "The night kids. The ones that call you out. They only come after 2 a.m. She gave me a look. "That's so stupid." "Yeah," I said, "it is." But I didn't sleep well that night. I woke up to whispers, giggles, a skipping rope sound. Then I heard the front door close. I sat up and went to Emily's room. Her bed was empty. I ran downstairs and flung open the door into the cold. Across the street, by the creek, I saw them, Figures, maybe 8 or 9 of them. Kids in Halloween costumes, pajamas, even clothes that looked way too old. One had a cone party hat, another in a 90s windbreaker. Their eyes glinted like mirrors, and in the middle of them I saw Emily, dazed, pale, walking like she was half asleep. I screamed her name, I ran to her, but she turned and looked at me like she didn't recognize who I was. I yelled her name again, but one of the children grabbed her hand and started pulling. Several then turned their glares towards me, cold, dead eyes warning me. One boy in pajamas started towards me with teeth bared and hands raised. I stumbled backward into the street. Opening his mouth, he released a chilling wail that sounded like 1,000 children in agony, screaming all at once. All I could do was run. When I got to the porch, panting, I turned to look back. I watched helplessly, terrified as they vanished into the woods with Emily. The cops were called, flyers went up, dogs sniffed, drones flew. Nothing. No sign. No prints. No Emily. Weeks passed. My aunt passed. The dark cloud of Emily's disappearance has scarred our family forever. At school, we started working on the 5th grade legacy project, something each class does to leave a piece of themselves behind. This year's class chose a mural, hearts painted on the back wall with our names inside. But while we were outside looking at projects from the past, something caught my eye. In the back corner stood a totem-like pole made of a wood block adorned with plaster casts, faces. I stared at one near the bottom. I knew it. Emily's face. The plaque read, 5th grade class legacy project, 1997, guided by Miss Blackburn. That would have been her first year here, and if that's true, how does she still look exactly the same? That afternoon, I went to her classroom after hours. Her blinds were drawn. The room was empty, quiet, but something felt off. A drawer on her desk was slightly open, so I peeked. Inside, I saw something small and plastic. Emily's hair clip. My hair clip. The sparkly pink one with stars I let her borrow the night she vanished before she went to bed. That night, I locked my window. I stuffed towels under the crack in the door. I buried myself in blankets. Every light was on. Still, I heard it. The giggles, the skipping, the whispering. Then Emily's voice, right outside my window. She said my name. It started again last night. 3 soft knocks at the door, just after 2 a.m., the exact same as it's been for the past 4 nights. Knock, knock, knock. I know I shouldn't open it. I know what I saw. But when you hear children's voices whispering your name in the dark, when you see their silhouettes pressed against the frosted glass, it's hard to pretend you're not just a little bit hopeful that it's all been some horrible mistake. The Wilson kids died 5 years ago. Their house caught fire in the middle of the night. Faulty wiring, they said. By the time anyone noticed the smoke, it was already too late. The family was trapped upstairs. The whole street woke up to their screams. I did too, but I didn't do anything. I stood in my window and watched the flames eat their house alive. I told myself it was too late, that by the time I got outside, I couldn't have helped anyway. But I heard the knocking even then, faint and desperate, just like now. I think it came from inside the walls. The parents' bodies were found together, melted into the charred bed frame. But the kids, they were never found. Just tiny handprints on the floorboards leading to the front door. The door had claw marks in it, deep ones. The cops thought wild animals had gotten in. But wild animals don't knock. Last night, I finally opened the door. There was no one there. But the knocking didn't stop. It was coming from the walls now. And it's not just knocking anymore. They're talking. I can hear them behind the drywall, giggling and whispering, scraping their fingernails along the inside. They're moving, room to room, closer. They keep asking why I didn't help them, why I watched, why I did nothing. I tried to tell them I was scared, that I didn't know what to do. They didn't like that answer. I don't think they're going to leave this time. My lights are flickering, the air smells like smoke, and I can see tiny handprints forming on the wall beside me. They're inside the house now, and they're not alone. I didn't sleep. After the handprints appeared on the wall, I locked myself in the bathroom and turned the lights off. I don't know why, like hiding would help. I sat in the bathtub with a knife I found in the drawer, like that would make a difference. They didn't try to break in. They didn't have to. Around 3:15 a.m., the whispering started again. Not just the kids this time. Another voice joined them, deeper, slower, like it was learning how to speak. The children sounded afraid of it. I heard one of them say, "He's awake again." Then silence, and then the scratching started. Not at the walls this time, from inside the mirror. I swear I'm not crazy. I watched as a small crack formed in the center of the glass, spider-webbing outward like pressure was building behind it. Something moved on the other side, just beneath the surface. I turned away, and when I looked back, the mirror was normal again. But my reflection wasn't. It blinked when I didn't. I left the bathroom when the sun came up. I thought maybe daylight would push them back, like they were tied to the night somehow. But now things are different. It's not just the walls. It's the photos, too. Every picture in my house with people in it. Friends, family, even old school photos. All of their eyes are gone, scratched out. There's something worse. The Wilson kids are in them now, standing in the background, watching. One of them is behind me in the picture on my fridge, smiling. I'm in the photo too. I don't remember taking it. I don't remember ever smiling like that. I left the house around noon and drove until my gas light came on, parked in some diner lot an hour out of town. I've been sitting here for hours. I don't know where to go. But they do. There's a note under my windshield wiper, written in crayon. "Why did you leave the door open?" I didn't. I swear I closed it. No, I locked it. I know I did. I'm going home now. I have to. I think whatever was with them got out. I think it's wearing me, pretending to be me. And if that's true, then who's been driving my car for the last 10 minutes? It started 2 weeks after Elle left. The house was quiet. Too quiet, the kind where you can hear your own blood moving. The bed still smelled like her. Her pillow still had the shape of her head. I kept brushing my teeth and expecting her to call out from the bedroom, like she always did. "You left the light on again, babe." But she was gone. Left in a rush. Said she needed time. That was the last text I got. I didn't reply. Not because I didn't want to, I just didn't know what to say. The first night I saw it, I thought I was losing it. It was around 2 a.m. I'd gotten up to take a piss, wandered into the kitchen for water, and looked out of the back window. Someone, was standing at the edge of the garden, by the hedge. Still. No phone, no cigarette, just standing. I blinked and it was gone. Didn't sleep much after that. Night 2, same time. I saw her again. Her. That's what made my stomach twist. She looked like Elle, or enough like her in the dark. That hoodie she always wore. Legs slightly bowed in that same way. Hair up in a messy bun. But it wasn't her. She didn't move. Not even to shift her weight. Just stood there under the motion light, hands dangling at her sides like they didn't belong to her. I didn't go outside, just turned off the tap and sat on the kitchen floor until sunrise. By night 3, I stopped pretending it wasn't happening. I made coffee at 11 p.m. and sat in the living room, lights off, watching the garden through the curtains. I was tired but sharp, waiting. The air felt thick, heavy. Then she was there, under the light again. I pressed my forehead to the cold glass, took her in properly. It looked like Elle, yeah, from a distance, but her body was wrong. Her shoulders sat too high. Her arms hung stiff, not relaxed. Her hands opened and closed like she was rehearsing the motion. The hoodie looked too tight in some places, too loose in others, like she was trying to wear something meant for someone else. And she wasn't breathing, at all. I dropped my coffee mug. The sound made her tilt her head, not fast, not startled, just slow and off-kilter, like a puppet responding to the wrong cue. Then she turned and walked away. That walk, Jesus. She didn't bend her knees right. Her steps were short, dragging. Her arms didn't swing. It was like she'd watched videos of people walking and was doing her best to copy it, but hadn't quite figured out how the joints were supposed to work. I didn't sleep that night. Didn't eat the next day. By night 5, I'd set up a motion camera and floodlight out back. Something to prove to myself I wasn't just losing my mind. I watched the camera feed live on my laptop. 3:17 a.m. Ping. She was right there, inches from the lens. The floodlight blew out her features, but I could see her eyes, too round, too wide, and her mouth slightly open, like she was in mid-sentence but didn't know the words. I rewound the footage and watched her walk up to the camera frame by frame. Her movements were stiff, mechanical. At one point, she lifted her arm and bent it the wrong way. Her elbow popped out sideways like she forgot which direction it was supposed to go. I almost called the police. Almost. But what would I say? My ex is in my garden and her elbow bends backward now. Night 6, I cracked. I went to the window and shouted, "What do you want?" She didn't answer, didn't flinch, just stared. The next night, she spoke. I was upstairs, brushing my teeth. I glanced out the bathroom window and froze. She was in the driveway this time, closer. She opened her mouth too slow, like unzipping something wet. Her lips stretched far, too far, and the sound came out after the motion, like it wasn't connected to her body. Jai. Ee. Flat. No tone. Just the sound of my name dropped into the air like a piece of meat. Her tongue moved like it was being pulled by string. Her jaw hung open too long, then snapped shut with a little click. And her voice, it was close to Elle's, but too tight, too deep in her chest, like it was being squeezed through someone else's throat, like she'd only recently figured out how to make noise at all. Then she smiled, too wide, like she was proud. Then came the words, "I miss our pasta nights." I dropped my toothbrush. Elle used to say that, after bad days. It was her code for let's cook something stupid and fall asleep to horror movies on the couch. But this wasn't her. This thing was parroting something it had no right to know. It was like it had access to something it shouldn't. Her words, her tone, but only the surface, like an actor who'd memorized the lines without knowing what they meant. I duct-taped the windows after that, but it didn't stop. I heard her walking on the patio. Her footsteps were slow, uneven. Sometimes she'd stop mid-step, then shuffle again like she was still figuring it out. She knocked once, just once, always around the same time, 3:10, 3:20 a.m. Never tried the door, never broke a window, never forced anything. It was like she was waiting for me to let her in. By night 10, I stopped looking, stopped eating. I kept the lights on and sat with my back against the kitchen cupboards, knife in my hand, whole body buzzing. She didn't come that night, which was worse, because on night 11 I woke up to breathing. Not mine. It was coming from the other side of my bedroom door. Slow, wet, just close enough for the sound to slip under the frame. I sat up in bed, held my breath. The doorknob shifted, clicked. I didn't move, didn't make a sound. The breathing stopped. Then a voice. Jamie. I came in. It was her voice, flat, slow, like she was figuring it out as she went. But the door never opened. Eventually, I found the courage to flip the bedside light. Nothing. No shadow under the door. No footsteps retreating. I crept to the hallway, knees shaking. The front door downstairs was wide open. The hallway rug had a streak of mud across it. No prints, just mud, dragged in like something was pulled. I stayed awake until dawn. Every creak in the house made my spine lock up. When morning came, I walked outside, half expecting to find her standing there. I didn't, but my hoodie, Elle's hoodie, was lying in the grass. It was inside out and wet. I don't know how long I've been awake now. 3 days, 4. She hasn't come back, not yet. But I know she will. She's watching, waiting, just outside the places I let myself look. I can hear her walking sometimes, practicing. My father asked me to play hide and seek for the first time in years. It's gone from playful to terrifying. My dad and I have always been close. We're a small family, just me and him in our modest house on the edge of town. He's a quiet, hard-working man, not the type to play pranks or act childish. In fact, since I became a teenager, he's been pretty serious, focusing on work and making sure I'm doing okay in school. I can't stress enough how out of character his recent behavior has been. About a week ago, out of the blue, Dad asked me with a grin if I wanted to play hide and seek, just like we used to when I was little. At first I laughed, thinking he was joking. We hadn't played that game in years. I'm 18 now, and the last time I remember hiding behind the curtains, I was maybe 7. But he was completely serious. His eyes lit up with a kind of childlike excitement I hadn't seen in a long time. I figured it wouldn't hurt to humor him. Honestly, I was a bit touched. It was nice to see him happy and playful for once. So I agreed. I covered my eyes with my hands and leaned against the living room wall, suppressing a smile as I started counting out loud. I felt a silly wave of nostalgia washing over me with each number. Ready or not, here I come, I called out, half expecting him to have given up already. But Dad was nowhere in sight at first glance. I wandered through the downstairs rooms, trying not to laugh as I peeked around corners and checked behind furniture. It didn't take long to find him crouching behind the long drapes in the dining room. I could see his brown loafers sticking out from beneath the curtain hem. I pulled back the curtain, sing-songing, "Found you," like I was 5 years old again. Dad burst out laughing, a genuine booming laugh that warmed me to hear. He stood up, rubbing the back of his neck with a goofy smile. "Guess I need to try harder, huh?" He chuckled. I laughed with him. It felt good, innocent fun. For a moment, he didn't seem so weighed down by life, and I didn't feel so old. We switched roles, and this time I hid while he counted down from 20. I could hear the playful tone in his voice as he called out numbers, like he was really enjoying this. I stifled giggles from my hiding spot under the kitchen table as his footsteps tromped through the house. Where, oh where could she be? Dad muttered theatrically. I had to clap a hand over my mouth to keep from giving myself away. When he finally found me, honestly, I wasn't hidden well. I was too busy holding in laughter. We were both grinning like idiots. That first night, we only played a few rounds. After 3 or 4 quick games, we decided to call it quits. It was getting late, and we were both a little breathless from laughing and scurrying around. As I headed upstairs to my room, Dad ruffled my hair and thanked me for playing along. I hadn't seen him smile that wide in ages. I remember going to bed feeling happy that night. It was nice to bond with my father like that, to see a spark in him I thought had faded. I had no way of knowing how badly things would spiral after that. At the time, it was just a sweet, silly game. I wish it had stayed that way. A couple of days later, one evening after dinner, Dad asked me eagerly if I wanted another round of hide and seek. I paused, a bit surprised that he was still this enthusiastic, but I agreed. I figured the first time had made him happy, and there was no harm in a little more fun. Still, something in his eyes gave me a pang of unease. His excitement seemed almost intense. This time, the game felt different. Dad was taking it much more seriously. As soon as I finished counting and started looking, I could tell he had stepped up his hiding spots significantly. It was almost impressive at first. I found him in the first round, curled up under the kitchen sink, knees folded awkwardly to his chest among the pipes and cleaning supplies. He was crammed into the dark cabinet in a way that no grown man should have been able to fit. I actually laughed in disbelief when I opened the cabinet door and saw his contorted body tucked behind the trash bin. He just blinked up at me with a weird, childlike grin. After a long moment, he unfolded himself and crawled out, wordless this time except for a faint chuckle as he dusted off his pants. In the next round, he somehow balanced himself on top of the tall wardrobe in his bedroom. I walked in, thinking he might be hiding in the closet, but then I heard a shuffling above me. I looked up and nearly screamed. Dad was lying flat on his stomach atop the wardrobe, pressed between an old suitcase and the ceiling. I have no idea how he even got up there so quickly and quietly. My heart jumped into my throat as I realized those eyes staring down at me from the darkness were his. When I exclaimed in surprise, he just stared, unblinking. It took me saying, I see you, Dad. Game's over," for him to finally respond. He slowly began to climb down, never breaking eye contact with me the entire time. The hair on the back of my neck stood up. Something about the way he moved was off, almost too slow and deliberate. Despite my growing unease, Dad insisted on one more hiding spot. I didn't even have time to object before he took off down the hallway to hide again. I sighed and started counting down from 20, trying to shake off the weird feeling that was creeping up on me. It's just a game, I told myself. He's probably trying to spice it up, make it challenging. But as the seconds ticked by, that nervous knot in my stomach only tightened. I searched for him everywhere, downstairs, upstairs, even briefly outside on the porch in case he'd stepped out, calling for him as I went. Nothing. He didn't respond at all, not even a peep. 10 minutes passed, then 15, and I still hadn't found him. By now, my nerves were on edge. The house was eerily quiet except for the sound of my own footsteps on the floorboards. I gave up and called out, "Okay, you win. Come out now, Dad." My voice echoed down the dark hallway. There was no answer. A panicky thought flitted through my mind. What if he got stuck somewhere or hurt? This had gone way beyond a simple game. I was about to grab my phone to call him when I noticed something odd. The door to the upstairs linen closet was open, just a crack. We usually keep that closet shut. I walked towards it, heart thudding. "Dad?" I called softly. No response. With a trembling hand, I yanked the closet door open. At first, all I saw were towels and sheets stuffed on the shelves. Then I saw eyes, my dad's eyes, peering out from the darkness between the stacks of linens. I jumped back with a yelp before I recognized him. He was wedged on the top shelf of the closet, curled up and jammed behind a bulky old comforter. He had practically become part of the pile of blankets, completely still. For a moment, we just stared at each other. He didn't blink. He didn't laugh or say, "Got me." He just watched me, half hidden among the sheets. His eyes looked strange, wide and unsteady. It sent a chill through me. "Dad, "What are you doing? Come out. You're going to hurt yourself," I stammered, trying to sound lighthearted. I was genuinely freaked out to find him in such a bizarre spot. He didn't respond or move. He was crouched so unnaturally on that shelf, I wondered if he could move without help. I reached in and awkwardly touched his arm. It was warm. He was definitely alive and awake. In fact, at my touch, he finally grinned. But it wasn't a normal, embarrassed grin of being caught. It was slow, creeping, and somehow distant, as if it took him a second to remember how to smile. Slowly, he began to untangle himself from the blankets and climb down. I stepped back to give him room, my heart hammering. He practically slithered out of the closet, feet thumping to the floor. I forced a laugh. "That was a really good hiding spot, Dad." My voice came out thin. I didn't know what else to say. Dad stood there in the hallway, a full head taller than me, breathing a bit hard. There were deep creases on his arms where the wire shelf had pressed into his skin. He tilted his head, still fixing me with that unsettling stare. "Your turn to hide," he said softly. The playful, warm tone from our first game was completely gone. His voice was flat, almost expectant. I blinked. Actually, I wanted to tell him I was done, that this was too weird, but he immediately covered his eyes with one hand and started counting. 20, 19, 18, he whispered, as if we'd never stopped playing. My stomach dropped. He wasn't listening to me at all. "Dad, wait," I pleaded, feeling a swirl of fear. He continued counting, peeking between his fingers with one eye. The way he was standing there, looming in the dim hallway, chanting numbers under his breath, it was honestly giving me chills. I did the only thing I could think of. I backed away and ducked into the bathroom, locking the door. My hands were shaking. "I don't want to play anymore," I called through the door, voice cracking. His counting stopped at 12. For a long moment, there was silence. I held my breath, staring at the thin line of light under the bathroom door, searching for the shadow of his feet. Nothing. After what felt like an eternity, I heard him shuffle away down the hall without a word. I waited another minute, my heart rattling in my chest, before slowly opening the door. The hallway was empty. I found Dad back in the living room, sitting on the couch in the dark. The TV was off. He was just sitting there in silence. He didn't look at me as I inched into the doorway. In the faint light, I could see he was rubbing his temples. He looked tired, drained. "Dad?" I asked quietly. He finally turned his head toward me. His eyes were glassy and he looked confused, like he wasn't sure how he'd gotten there. "That got a little out of hand, huh?" he mumbled, offering me a shaky laugh. The way he spoke was back to his normal self, gentle, apologetic. I exhaled in relief. "Maybe we should call it a night," I said, trying to sound casual. He nodded slowly. Yeah, okay." I hurried upstairs, mumbling something about homework. My mind was racing. What was that? Maybe he was trying to scare me on purpose? But why would he do that? None of it made sense. Lying in bed, I told myself that Dad just got too into the game and lost sight of reality for a bit. Everyone gets carried away once in a while, right? I eventually fell into a fitful sleep, hoping that by morning this would all just be a weird little memory we'd both quietly decide to forget. I hoped that would be the end of our hide-and-seek adventures. It wasn't. The very next night, I was in my room scrolling on my phone when I heard a soft knock on my door. It was almost midnight. Through the wood, I heard my dad's voice, eerily calm. "Honey, let's play again." A spike of anxiety shot through me. No, not again. I cracked open my door. Dad stood in the dark hallway, the faint glow from my bedside lamp falling on half his face. He wore the same unnerving smile from the night before. His eyes looked shiny and far away. "Dad, it's really late," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I have school tomorrow. Maybe we can skip tonight." He stepped forward into my doorway, not seeming to hear me. "Just one game," he said quietly. It didn't sound like a request. My stomach flipped. There was an intensity in him that set every instinct I had on edge. "Dad," I whispered. "I really don't." Before I could finish, he reached past me and flicked off the lamp in my room. Suddenly, we were in near darkness. I gasped in surprise. Dad's face was now just a silhouette inches from mine. "Go hide," he breathed, that grin still on his face. I stood there, frozen. His behavior from last night was seared in my memory. I didn't want a repeat of that terror, but I also wasn't sure what he'd do if I refused outright. His smile twitched, and his voice came out sing-song in the dark. "You better hurry. 20, 19, 18. He had already covered his eyes with one hand, starting a count. My heart leapt into my throat. He was starting the game whether I liked it or not. I realized then just how wrong this had all become. This wasn't my dad being goofy or overzealous anymore. Something was broken. Something was dangerous. He kept counting, numbers tumbling from his lips in a chilling whisper. I took a shaky step back into the hall. I could barely see, but I knew I had seconds before he finished. I thought about trying to run past him and get out the front door. But what if it was locked again? And he was blocking the hallway. No time. Hide. For now, just hide. I forced my legs to move. As Dad whispered 15, 14, 13, I slipped into the guest bedroom across from mine. The door was ajar, and I didn't dare close it and make noise. In the faint glow from a nightlight down the hall, I spotted the bed and immediately dove underneath it. My back pressed up against the dusty hardwood floor as I tried to make myself as flat and small as possible. 10, 9, 8. His voice floated down the hall. In the stillness, I became acutely aware of my own breathing, far too loud. I clamped a hand over my mouth. My entire body was trembling. This is insane, I thought. I need to get out of here. I need help. 5, 4, 3. I held my breath, tears pricking at my eyes in the darkness under the bed. The house had gone deathly quiet. 2, 1. "Ready or not, here I come," Dad announced. His tone was light, sing-song, but I heard the edges of a manic glee in it. Silence fell again. I strained to hear any hint of movement. For a long moment, there was nothing. Then, somewhere down the hallway, floorboards creaked. He was walking slowly. The soft thud of bare feet against wood grew more distinct. He was coming closer. Through the narrow gap between the floor and the bed frame, I saw his feet step into the guest room. I bit my tongue, praying he wouldn't hear the thunderous pounding of my heart. He moved with an eerie calm, no fumbling or hesitation. A shadow shifted as he stooped down. I saw his hand, then his forearm stretched to the ground. My dad dropped to all fours on the floor of the guest room, crouching low like a predator ready to pounce. I had to choke back a gasp. His head turned side to side, scanning the room at ground level. All of a sudden, his face swung into view, peering under the bed from the opposite side. I saw his eyes first, catching a glint of hall light. He was grinning, his mouth pulled in that same too-wide smile. I realized he had known exactly where I was. He was just taking his time. I couldn't help it. A tiny, involuntary cry escaped my throat. In an instant, that grin of his stretched wider, and I heard a low giggle rumble from him. Before he could move around to my side, adrenaline took over. I rolled out from under the bed behind him, scrambling on my hands and knees. He must have heard me because I heard him scuttle around with astonishing speed. His palms slapped the floor as he propelled himself after me. I leapt to my feet and darted out of the guest room door. A wild, high-pitched laugh echoed from behind as he gave chase. "Run, run, run!" he crooned in a gleeful whisper that bounced off the dark walls. I sprinted down the hallway, my socks skidding on the wood. I veered into the kitchen and yanked the door closed behind me, then instantly regretted it. Now I was cornered with nowhere to go. I hadn't even caught my breath before I saw the door handle twisting. I threw my weight against the door to hold it shut. For a moment, the handle jiggled insistently. I could hear him breathing on the other side, a soft panting, almost excited sound. "I hear you," he whispered through the door, voice muffled but sing-song. I clapped a hand over my mouth, stifling a sob. Suddenly, the pressure on the door released. I realized he'd let go of the handle. Was he leaving? I didn't hear footsteps. Cautiously, I eased up on the pressure. Maybe he's trying to trick me, I thought. Seconds dragged by. Then, without warning, a rapid thump, thump, thump hit the door near the bottom. He was pounding on it, low and fast. I yelped and shoved hard against the wood, my panic renewed. The door rattled as he drummed on it from the other side in a frenzy, giggling like a child. He wasn't trying to open it. He was just hitting it, playing with me, testing my resolve. Each hit made the hollow door boom. I bit back a scream, tears streaming now. Just as abruptly as it began, the pounding stopped. The sudden quiet was almost worse. I strained to hear any movement, my ear close to the door. Nothing. Then a single tap came, right at the height of my head, as if he gently pressed a finger there. I nearly jumped out of my skin. "Still hiding?" Dad cooed on the other side of the thin door. He was so close I could almost feel his breath through the gap. "You can't hide forever." His voice was a husky whisper. My blood ran cold. Think. He had me trapped in the kitchen. The only other exit was the back door to the yard. In the dark, I fumbled across the room, groping for the deadbolt. My shaky fingers found it, and I quietly flipped it open. Please, I prayed, let this door be unlocked. I eased the back door knob, and to my amazement, it turned. I stole one last glance at the kitchen entrance. The door was still shut. I didn't know where Dad was now. He'd gone eerily silent again. Heart pounding, I pushed open the back door just enough to slip through. The hinges whined ever so softly. I cringed. If he was anywhere nearby, that sound would draw him. The night air was like a shock to my system, cold and real. I realized I was barefoot, but I didn't care. I stepped out onto the back porch and gently pulled the door closed behind me. If I could just get off the porch and around the side of the house, maybe I could make a break for a neighbor's or flag down a car on the street. I crept down the porch steps into our backyard. The grass was icy against my feet. Clouds covered the moon, plunging everything into darkness. Our yard isn't fenced, so theoretically I had a clean shot to run. But if Dad realized I was outside, he could easily catch me in the open. I decided to hug the house wall and move toward the front yard as stealthily as possible. I edged along past the darkened windows of the dining room and living room. Each window was like a black mirror. I was terrified I'd see my dad's face appear in one of them, looking out at me. But all I saw was my own reflection and the faint glow of interior lamps we'd left on. I was nearing the front corner of the house. Just a few more feet and I'd be in the front yard, then the street. I risked speeding up my steps. Almost there. All of a sudden, a figure stepped out around the corner of the house. My heart stopped. It was Dad. He had gone outside and was circling around, anticipating I might flee. And now we were face to face in the dark yard, only a few yards apart. I stood paralyzed, like a deer in headlights. Dad's face was mostly in shadow, but I could see the glint of his eyes. He wasn't smiling anymore. His mouth hung slightly open, and his head was tilted at that unsettling angle again, as if he himself was not sure what he was looking at. We stared at each other for one endless second. Then he lunged. I screamed and bolted to the side, just barely avoiding his grasp. I tore across the front yard. My ankle twisted as I stumbled over something in the dark, sending me sprawling onto the cold grass. Pain shot up my leg. I scrambled up, adrenaline numbing the ache. Behind me, I heard rapid, heavy footfalls. He was running at me full tilt. A strange, rasping breath, almost a growl, escaped his throat as he closed in. Desperate, I darted to the left, around the side of our parked car in the driveway. Dad skidded on the dew-slick grass, momentarily losing traction. It gave me a second's lead. I dashed across the driveway, heading for the street. If I could reach the road, maybe someone driving by. My bare feet slapped the pavement as I reached the quiet suburban street. It was empty. No cars, no people, just silent houses. I didn't even have time to scream for help. Dad was only a few paces behind. I could feel him gaining on me. In a last surge of panic, I cut hard into our neighbor's yard, intending to loop back to another driveway or door to pound for help. But I was not fast enough. I felt fingers brush the back of my shirt, then a hand fisted a clump of my hair. I was yanked backwards violently, losing my balance. I hit the ground on my back, the wind knocked out of me. Before I could even gasp, Dad was on me. He pinned me with his weight, one hand clamping over my mouth. His other hand held my wrists with crushing force above my head. I thrashed, eyes wide with terror. His face loomed inches from mine in the darkness. There was sweat beading on his forehead and his eyes. His eyes looked almost hungry. I whimpered against his palm, tears leaking from the corners of my eyes. "Shh," he hissed softly. His lips were pulled back in a grin, but I saw madness and fury dancing underneath that smile. "You ran," he said, voice tinged with a bizarre mix of disappointment and glee. "That's against the rules." I shook my head frantically, trying to plead, but his hand smothered any sound. My scalp throbbed where he'd yanked my hair. I was completely overpowered. My dad was much stronger than me, and he had leverage. Still pinning me, he lifted his hand from my mouth slightly, just enough for me to suck in a desperate breath. I started to scream, but he slammed his hand down again, cutting it off. "Nope," he whispered, wagging one finger of his other hand in front of my face like I was a naughty child. "No screaming. You know better. This is a quiet game." My chest heaved under him. I was sobbing silently now, the reality hitting me that I might not get away. Above us, a porch light flicked on. One of the neighbors, alerted by the brief scream or the commotion, maybe. Dad glanced toward the light, then back at me. His expression hardened. Without warning, he leaned down and pressed his face into the crook of my neck. I felt his nose and lips against my skin, like he was sniffing me. I squirmed, a jolt of revulsion mixing with terror. He inhaled deeply, then let out a shuddery breath that tickled my neck. I stilled, too frightened to move. "Found you," he murmured against my ear almost lovingly. "I found you, sweetie." Hot tears slid down my cheeks. My own father's voice was unrecognizable, both tender and twisted at the same time. He giggled softly, a grotesque sound so close to my ear it made me cringe inwardly. A quiet hum came from his throat, like a lullaby missing all the notes. He wasn't looking at me anymore. He was looking past me, or maybe inside me. I wanted to retch. This wasn't real. This thing pinning me down couldn't be my dad. My dad was gentle, protective. He wouldn't hurt me. But here he was, torturing me with this game. The neighbor's porch light suddenly turned off again. Maybe they looked out, saw nothing in the dark, and figured it was just an animal or a bad dream. Any hope of rescue faded. It was just me and my father in the dark yard, and I was at his mercy. He lifted his head to look at me again. In the faint starlight, I could see sweat dripping down his temple, his hair hanging loose and wild. "You broke the rules," he said, clucking his tongue. running, screaming. That's not how we play. I tried to speak under his hand, my voice coming out as a muffled plea. His brow furrowed, almost like he was concerned. He eased his palm off my mouth a bit. What was that? Dad, please, I choked out between sobs, my voice quivering. Please, stop. For a split second, something in his face changed. The grin faltered, his eyes flickered with confusion, as if he were waking up from a dream. He blinked rapidly, looking down at me, his daughter crying beneath him, and his breathing grew uneven. "Baby," he whispered, but it sounded like his normal voice, the real him. What's... He released my wrists and leaned back slightly, shifting off me. Relief and hope surged in my chest. "Dad," I whispered back, "are you okay? Please, let's stop. Let's go inside." He ran a trembling hand through his hair. In the dark, I saw a flash of remorse in his expression. He opened his mouth to say something, maybe to apologize, I'll never know. Because in the next instant, that manic gleam flooded back into his eyes, as if a switch flipped. His mouth curved slowly back into that terrible smile. "Oh," he cooed, pressing a finger to my lips to hush me. "You almost fooled me, nearly got me to break character." He chuckled, and my heart sank. Whatever momentary clarity he'd had, it was gone. The game had him again. He stood up in one swift motion, yanking me to my feet by my arm. I stumbled, legs weak and aching. Before I could try to pull away, he started half dragging, half guiding me back toward our house. His grip was steel. I couldn't wrench free. "It's okay," he whispered, as if comforting me. "Game's almost over. Just one last round. One special round."